The Brewhouse was created to capture and share with you the long history of the Genesee Brewery. But the brewery itself isn't half as interesting as the beer and the people who make it. Visit GeneseeBrewhouse.com. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Pleasure to have our resident Major League Baseball player, former baseball player, Greg Keagle with us.
Always nice to be here.
Bringing back plaid to culture, which is a nice sign.
It's good luck.
Yeah, Mike Catalana co-hosting, Pat Duffy, wearing Toronto gear.
Yeah, I figured I'd honor the only Toronto team without championship aspirations in the next 5 years. Canada Day jersey for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Wait a minute, did you just admit that the Maple Leafs have a chance at a championship?
No. I said championship aspirations.
Oh, okay.
Greg, we were going to talk, there were projections, and there's 5 teams in Major League Baseball right now that are on the path to 100 losses. And it occurred to me, like, every time we try to talk baseball, we lead with something negative. Do we just, enjoy beating up on baseball so much that that's always the path?
Well, we've talked about it before, about how it's such an analytical game. It's a game that is, mired in failure, right? Some guys that are, 3 out of 10 are Hall of Famers. So typically, it's overcoming adversity. How do you overcome a slump? How do you deal with bases loaded, 2 outs? That is really the story a lot of times in baseball. So I don't think that it's a negativity as much as it's a lot of times just the story in baseball.
There's like Josh Wetzel, we had him on, does Red Wings play-by-play a number of times, and one of the times he was hesitant to come on, he says, guys, you're just so negative about baseball, and we all like it.
Well,
but we're negative about it.
Yeah, but I think that's all in good fun. Pat likes to, joke with everybody about it. So, I don't think that it's, as I said, I don't really think that it's a negative take. I think that it's more analytical, right? When you look at things under a microscope, a lot of times you're going to have to see both sides of the story. Nobody has to say, if someone's on a home run streak, that is the story, but they still talk about the guy that got him out. Right? So which one is successful? Is it the pitcher or the batter? So on both sides of the story, typically somebody's successful and somebody's failing, and it just depends on which way you look at it.
The game could have a lot of changes. And even, like you said, even people who love the game get frustrated. It moves at a glacial pace, right? They just don't want to make changes that I think, I don't like when a sport tries to make changes because they think they're going to bring in all these other people. I think they need to make some changes that would make it better for the people who do like the game. How many times do you talk to somebody who is a huge fan of a team and tells you, I fell asleep in the 7th inning, or I didn't make it to the end of the game.
That's the beauty of the game.
Well, but you fell asleep not because, because the game was a regulation Yankees-Red Sox game that at 11 o'clock at night, we're at work. We sometimes show Yankees games as part of a package on 13, and the game will start at 7. And I still have to talk to the news producer and say, we may not be on live at 11 o'clock, and that's 4 hours. Yeah. So we know, and as people who know baseball know that some of that should be changing. It just doesn't move quickly
I keep waiting for it to turn retro. Everybody else is doing it this way. Baseball keeps doing it this way, and at some point, maybe that'll pay off.
Loop back around, but I guess it comes down to, if you want to talk about modern fans, attention span, right? Like every other major sport. And this isn't a negative for baseball, because I think that you guys make a great point. The beauty of the sport is in the fact that you can fall asleep in the 7th inning watching the game, right? It's impossible to take those highlights and package them in a way, this, to give you 30 seconds of unbelievable action like you can in hockey, like you can in basketball, like you can in football. But going back to the original point, right? Like, you're talking about a sport where the greatest hitter in the history of the game made contact 4 out of 10 times he was up at the plate, right? I think that it's less about being negative and more about highlighting how truly difficult it is to be not only a good baseball player, but a good baseball team. Because you have to find enough of those guys at the same time, have a manager, with the exception of Aaron Boone, that can outsmart everybody on the other side, right? Like, the beauty of baseball is in the fact that we're always talking negative about it.
Well, what are we going to do about all these rotten teams? We could have as many as 7 teams this year lose 100 games.
Unfortunately, that's part of baseball's process. And, we joke about it's the process. It's not a Joel Embiid, trust the process moment. But baseball goes through highs and lows. You have times where there's a lot of parity. And I don't know that parity is always a good thing, right? You've got teams where, everybody likes to see a team, bolt out of the gates. Now, obviously, it makes pennant races boring, but everybody else talks about beating that team, and the story becomes: is our team good enough to beat, a Dodgers, or is our team good enough to beat, the Red Sox of last year? So
last year,
yeah, and I mentioned of last year. But again, and and even some of the story is that Boston's failing now, and they've got this, a lot of the same pieces. And what they did last year was they played with chemistry. They got small ball hits. They took extra bases. I guess that's the beauty of the game, is truly the strategy of the game. So nobody knows when the most important part of the game is going to happen. Could be first pitch, could be last pitch. It's the only game that still doesn't have a time limit.
We are the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. We talk Bills next. The Press Box is brought to you in part by Bay & Goodman Pizza, a local Rochester favorite. Corner of North Winton and Browncroft, Bay & Goodman Pizza. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. The Rochester Press Box is presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Well, Bill's minicamp, all I hear, all is injuries. How much is this going to cripple the process as we reach September in terms of what's happening now?
None at all. It doesn't. I mean, the coaches whine about everything. They talk, and McDermott talks sometimes like they have a game next week. Yes, are there things they would like to see? And, getting the group together. They have training camp for some of that, which is the on-field work that's going to be a little more intensive. They're seeing other guys. This is the one benefit sometimes if you have some guys that are nicked up that you know how they play, you know a lot about them. Use these mini camps to give other guys the, quote, reps that they're going to need. Sure. Would you like to have everybody healthy? You'd much rather them healthy in July and August, and certainly into September for the season to start.
Waste of time?
No, it's not a waste of time. You've got 90 guys. You're trying to sift through it, because the reality is they go into training camp. They won't admit it. They know 60 guys on that roster. Absolutely 60. They know, and they're going to cut it to 53, and they're stunned when one or two guys, because they see what guys do in the spring, so they're looking at individual guys. Yes, it would be nice if Mitch Morris gets a lot of snaps now with Josh Allen for these few days of a mini camp. There's an overreaction to all those things. It is still months away from playing games. They're getting a look at a lot of different guys.
Especially in those two areas of concern, the offensive line and the receivers trying to get used to Josh Allen, that there's something of value here.
Well, on the offensive line, I don't know, because you're not even really making contact. Yeah. I mean, the center would be the most valuable position, but you're missing 80 snaps over a week, 100 snaps.
And your center is a veteran guy who has been around, so it's not like he's a rookie just come into camp.
That being said, I think you might be understating the importance to this coaching staff and front office of mini camps, because it was last year that what we thought was a joke, like a sending a message thing, that Robert Foster was the #1 wide receiver on the minicamp offense. And all of a sudden, Robert Foster played a legitimate role a little while into the season. Yes, sir?
And then got cut. And then came back.
Sure.
So, and it's like, and then all of a sudden, Robert Foster is this guy. And then you'll see them 2 weeks into the season make a major change on the offensive line, where a guy gets benched, another guy moves from tackle to guard, and all of a sudden it's plan B. So, yes, I think it's important. It can be overstated.
Okay, all I'm saying, relax, mister, all right? Getting a little attitude.
Hold on, let the athlete talk.
NFL is a week-to-week sport, right? So a lot of changes, to your point. They, can be widespread strategy changes from one week to the other, partially because of injury and partially just because of what it, eye test, what it looks like on TV. Mini camps and spring trainings, I think you both bring valid points. Mike's point about veteran players know what to do, how to get ready. Cecil Fielder wore sneakers all through batting practice, all through, infield. He never put a pair of spikes on, right? So I think that, guys do know what to do. You can never
just get sick of it. I mean, how much is too much?
Well,
it's the entire calendar.
It is, and I think for like I said, for guys that have played long enough, they want to get to games. They even want to probably get to mid-season when hope to have a fighting chance with the last 8 games of the season. you know, when you look at any spring training or any prep work, it is all timing, and so the parts of the game that need timing, quarterback, receivers, things of that nature, you can't have enough practice in that. But as far as the physicality and offensive line, until it's game speed, are they really running as hard? They're not chipping. It's not the same.
This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Like it or not is next. Here's the Press Box trivia question, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390.
Today is all about belief. Right? It's not enough for me to believe it. It's not enough for Coach Hill or Coach Barstrom to believe it. You have to be the ones that believe that you are capable of running the way that we all know you are capable of, and that those negative thoughts that are coming into your head, you can acknowledge and push away. What's your response to them going to be? 5 more meters, 5 more meters, 5 more meters.
Here's the Press Box trivia answer, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. We are the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Pat, like it or not, in fact, the USA national women's soccer team beat Thailand by 13 goals.
13-0, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'll take that. I think it's great. I saw a lot of people. I really hate these sports people on Twitter that want to be high and mighty and how dare you and sanctity of the game and blah, 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 whatever. If they didn't beat them 13-0, you wouldn't be talking about U.S. women's soccer. Women's soccer did themselves a favor by getting publicity by beating Thailand 13-0. I don't care if the game's not competitive. Let them celebrate every goal. What Alex Morgan said, tied a women's team record with 5 goals, right?
Yeah.
Great. Good for them. You did exactly what you had to do to get yourself attention. It's nothing but good stuff for them from here on out.
But you don't have to score that many goals first. And secondly, the justification that I was reading is that it's more disrespectful if you don't try. Is that true?
Absolutely. It'd be like not scoring on a passed ball if you're at third base. That's worse. I'd rather get beat 20-0 and on every passed ball you move up. Nobody wants charity. Thailand has to play better. If you win 13-0 at that stage, I agree. It's not that easy to score, if I'm not mistaken. So games aren't always 13-12, and a lot of times it's 2-0, 1-0. So I love it.
It's an international stage. It's supposed to be the, quote, best teams that have scores made. I was at a kids' game once, soccer, and one team was so much better than the other. And the coach did a really good job of having his team pass the ball around and all, but it almost got embarrassing that they weren't scoring because it was almost like a game of keep away a little bit. I guess you could play some other players. Score as many goals as you want. What are we worried about? The feelings of the other team? Score 15.
Well, you brought up, does that apply to kids' games too?
Oh, it definitely should apply to kids' games. And what I think the coaches need to do, it's not necessarily tell the kids not to try. It's get the other kids plenty of playing time in those games. You can't tell a kid who's on the bench most of the time to not try. Go play as hard as you can. And then you can look at the other team and say, I played my whole roster. I don't know what you need me to do. So the U.S. national team scored 20 goals the next time.
Mike, I saw by the score. Like it or not, the Buffalo Bills triplets, quarterback, wide receiver, top running back, ranked 30th out of 32 teams in the NFL.
That's about where they belong now, right? I mean, your quarterback still needs a ton to prove. They don't really have anybody that would be considered a number one wide receiver, and McCoy's on the downside of his career. Now, it could look a lot different 6 or 8 games into this season if Allen really takes that step, but I don't know. You want to be optimistic and make them 25th? Like, I don't know if you can put them up much higher than
Counts
that.
For something, though.
What does it count for?
I mean the fact that, these are your dynamic playmakers. If you've got the 30th best in the league.
This is what is being said now because they haven't really done it, and they haven't done it for a full season.
Find me another team where LaShawn McCoy is your starting running back. If you can find me that in the NFL, you can justify bumping them up from 30 to 25.
But McCoy, as far as those rankings are concerned, is probably what keeps him from being 32.
Which is what's crazy about it.
Right. And I think...
You think he's done? Like, are you that down on McCoy?
Yeah, I am. I don't mean to be a jerk about it. He's had a hell of a career, but, again, it's a replaceable position that they're spending a lot of money for. He's on the downside of 30. Last season was not great. I don't know, Mike. You've seen him play longer than I have.
I'm saying this, and it would be it would be great for them if he's better than that. I think most of the people ranking that certainly are ranking wide receiver and absolutely quarterback lower coming into this year because we don't really know what you're going to get. He doesn't have a track record. Josh Allen doesn't have a track record. He's got half a season of pretty decent football, but he's not the guy. He's not Mahomes. He's not where everybody's expecting, 40-plus touchdowns this year.
This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Unfinished Business is next. And now here's this week's MVP Experience Stat of the Week, brought to you by Sport Clips, where it's good to be a guy. No appointment ever needed.
And now to Eichel. He floated one. Score!
Power up with Dunkin's protein-filled Power Breakfast Sandwich and Egg White Bowl. They're kind of like this, but with food. Try the new Power Breakfast Sandwich and Egg White Dunkin' Bowl. America runs on Dunkin'.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Unfinished Business brought to you by Dunkin'. America runs on Dunkin'.
The Kevin Durant injury in the NBA Finals was horrible for a multitude of reasons, but there's one man who was vindicated by what happened, and that's a guy who was on the floor watching it live. Kawhi Leonard, Toronto Raptors. He's in Toronto because of what happened in San Antonio, an injury that he sustained where he did not trust the doctors that were working for the Spurs to diagnose him the correct way. It caused so much friction that the San Antonio Spurs were forced to deal one of the best players in the NBA, and all he's done is go on to lead a team that should not even have been a playoff contender into the NBA Finals. When Kevin Durant snapped whatever he snapped in the back of his leg, people were all of a sudden coming out and talking about what a great guy Kevin Durant was, how tough he was, which is weird because merely 3 days before, everyone was questioning his toughness. You had rumors of his teammates looking at him, asking why he wouldn't play, and he felt that pressure maybe, and he goes out and plays, and could have affected his NBA career forever. He might miss all of next season. I know it's terrible to say, but there had to be a little part of Kawhi Leonard that looked at that situation, looked back at the crowd and said, see, this is why I did what I did. I told you these are people you aren't able to trust. And it raises a legitimate ethical decision when it comes to these team doctors. Do they care about the player and his career? Or do they care about the team that they're employed by? And if you look where the check is coming from, I think it's easy to figure out.
That is always going to be an uncomfortable relationship. And not entirely honest.
How do you have a doctor that can be concerned about this person when your check is being written by the owner who needs that player out to make money?
Yeah, they're good.
We talked earlier about Andrew McCutchen and his injury and, when it happened in the game. But I think the underlying part that needs to be addressed is the fact that it would happen on a non-hustle play. The game of baseball needs to be played hard from the first pitch to the last pitch for 162 games. That's what makes it great, and that's what keeps people watching the game. So part of what people are bored with and part of what makes the game boring is that it's not exciting on every play, that we don't see guys run hard to first base. We don't see guys, take extra bases. A lot of times I'll watch an outfielder just go after the ball knowing it's a stand-up double. I remember a game, and maybe it was watching youth baseball, but I remember watching guys hustle on every play. And until we get that back, I think we'll lose fans.
It's ironic that McCutchen is the guy that falls victim to this, and he's the picture of what you're talking about, a guy who went out every time. Every
play, and that's, he was limited with talent, right? He's not 6'2", 6'3", and 225 and built like a house like Trout. And the guy just goes out and to your point, it was always on, effort. And effort a lot of times is what is attractive.
Yeah, and I wonder though, because I've heard players sort of justify not hustling, but when it ends up leading to one of your teammates getting injured because you didn't run to first base, you would think that message would resonate in the clubhouse a little bit.
That is not a comfortable clubhouse after that game, I guarantee it. And there's probably two sides of it, unfortunately, just because that's nature of men. But that's a conflict, and you could see it in McCutchen's face on that play. He gave a glare as he got into the rundown because now he's just forced to get into a rundown.
All right, we'll go back to basketball a little bit. Anthony Davis thing is going to be fascinating in the offseason. And I wonder sometimes if the NBA needs to step in a little bit. Sure, Management can't comment on players because that's tampering. But what about his own agent? Because it's Clutch Sports, right? And they're running things. It's LeBron's guy. And he's basically said, well, we want the Knicks or we want the Lakers. And he's told the Celtics, go ahead and trade for him, but he's not going to sign there. And I think it's a bit much out of one group and one guy. And I don't think they've done Anthony Davis any favors. Now, by the time it's all said and done, Davis will be probably where he wants to be, which will likely be the Lakers, and they'll probably make a deal. But I think if you're the commissioner of the NBA, you got to do something about the agents stepping forward, not in the contract year, not when a player is a free agent, but in this case, it's 2 years before the guy got loose. Anthony Davis is going to go where Anthony Davis wants to go, but you don't need to disrupt the entire league to do it.
Or have the guy fly on the chartered plane with the team.
Exactly what he did with LA.
This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse Unfinished Business, brought to you by Dunkin'. America runs on Dunkin'. Thank you, Greg. Great as always. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As always, thank you for joining us. See you next week, the Rochester Press Box.